I promised myself that if I ever posted on this site, it would be because a line had been crossed so thoroughly that even strangers deserved to know the scorch marks it left behind. I have never been a drama magnet, never needed virtual validation, and until 48 hours ago, I thought my life was about to settle into the ordinary bliss people paste across social feeds. My fiancé, Ethan, was charismatic in the gentle way that wins parents, servers, and baristas. He persuaded everyone that his polished kindness was the same behind closed doors, and for the longest time, I believed him. Our wedding was scheduled for Saturday afternoon in the converted greenhouse behind an antique hotel my mother adored. Friday morning, I was in the suite the staff called the Ivy Room, surrounded by pastel silk and half-finished seating charts. My bridesmaids were downstairs negotiating with a florist who had mixed up lavender and lilac again. I scrolled through Ethan's tablet looking for the PDF of our vow cues so I could rehearse once more. The notifications were muted, but one message banner appeared anyway and punched a hole in the day. "Can't believe tomorrow is finally here," the contact name read, followed by an emoji she used when we were still college roommates. Lydia, his ex of 5 years, the one who had cheated on him with a mutual friend, and whom he claimed he had blocked everywhere. The message continued beneath the banner when I opened the thread. "Thanks again for the honor. I practiced the poem until it sounded perfect." Poem honor. Tomorrow. My stomach pinched tight. I scrolled up and saw weeks of conversation. He had invited her months ago and elevated her to ceremony storyteller, a role he invented so she could read a sentimental piece between the vows and the ring exchange. Worse, he had asked the officiant to introduce her as the woman who showed him what real love meant by letting him go. He wrote those words himself. The thread glowed like toxic waste. Lydia responded with heart emojis and pet names she never used for me. I sat on the carpet, wedding dress hanging from the wardrobe door, like an angel that hadn't decided if it should smite or save me. I breathed through the first wave of betrayal, thinking it had to be a misunderstanding. Ethan always prided himself on transparency. He despised secrets. The hypocrisy tasted metallic. I kept reading. 2 weeks earlier, he had messaged her a candid shot of my engagement ring resting on a mossy stone, boasting that he chose a classic cut because she's traditional like that. Lydia replied, "She's cute, not your usual, but cute." He wrote, "I told you I needed stability." She answered, "And I told you I'd always be your wild what if." Then he sent a winky face. Every subsequent exchange layered humiliation like wet paint on plaster. He reserved a seat for her beside his parents at the rehearsal dinner, gushed about how she would understand the symbolism of the greenhouse because it was where they once planned a picnic. He even suggested that after the reception, they could share a private toast for nostalgia's sake. My pulse pounded loud enough that I almost missed the knock. It was Maya, my maid of honor. She breezed in carrying spools of ribbon and stopped when she saw my expression. I turned the tablet toward her. Silence filled the suite, broken only by the hum of the mini fridge. Maya's smile drained, replaced by something fierce. "We burn it down or we walk away," she said. I asked her for time to think, which in retrospect meant time to engineer ruin. First, I needed confirmation beyond digital receipts. I called our officiant, Pastor Graham, a stoic who had known Ethan's family forever. I told him I wanted to verify the ceremony order. He read his notes. Welcome, short reflection, special reading by a guest. Vows, rings, pronouncement. The guest is Lydia S., he confirmed, mispronouncing her last name. My chest tightened, but my mind sharpened. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at my reflection in the vanity mirror. My own eyes looked unfamiliar, like someone pressing her face against glass from the wrong side. I loved Ethan yesterday. Today I had surgical clarity. There was no version of tomorrow where I stood beside him and pretended we were partners. There was also no version of tomorrow where betrayal went unlit. Revenge, however, is a weapon that requires precision and plausible deniability. I refuse to be painted as the hysterical runaway bride. If I fled in silence, Ethan could twist the narrative. My exit had to carry a payload he could never disarm. So I called the only person who hated deception more than I did, his sister, Harper. Harper answered on the second ring. I asked if she was alone. She said yes, she was ironing her bridesmaid dress. I told her I had discovered troubling information and needed her help for damage control. She listened without interrupting, exhaling a shocked, "What?" only when I mentioned the special reading. When I finished, she whispered, "I'm going to kill him." I said, "No, you're going to hand him the knife." We devised a plan while Maya guarded the door. Harper would ensure Ethan arrived at the ceremony on time. I would not. Instead, I would leave a sealed envelope with the coordinator to be given to Ethan at the altar. Inside would be my vows, but edited. The opening lines would appear tender. Midway, the text would pivot, revealing I had learned everything, thanking him for displaying his true colors before legal paperwork tied us. The closing sentence would instruct him to turn around and explain to our guests why the bride was gone. The note alone could have sufficed, but betrayal is a hydra. Sever one head, and two more grow. I needed a cleaner kill. So I called the bank. Ethan and I had a joint account we opened for wedding expenses. My personal savings were separate, but the joint account held deposits from both of us intended for honeymoon and first-month rent on a bigger apartment. Legally, either signer could withdraw. I transferred my contributions back into my personal account and left his untouched. Then I scheduled a wire transfer from my account to a women's shelter, equal to what my family had spent on non-refundable decor. Next, I contacted the venue manager. I explained there was a likely schedule change and requested the microphone feed be recorded from an hour before the ceremony. "We routinely archive audio for quality control," he replied, "so that's already taken care of." Perfect. Maya rallied the bridesmaids. We boxed my gown, hauled everything into her hatchback, and checked out of the hotel. The staff asked no questions because Maya tipped generously and said a family emergency arose. By early evening, we were at Harper's condo, drinking tea none of us tasted. Harper informed me that Ethan was at the rehearsal dinner, laughing with groomsmen. Lydia arrived wearing a slip dress the same blush tone as my bridesmaid palette. "She's basking," Harper reported via text. "I want to puke." Around midnight, I drafted the letter. Words came easily once I imagined him reading them under the glass ceiling, everyone watching. I began with tradition. "Ethan, today was supposed to be the start of forever." I described how I admired his kindness, intelligence, and integrity. Then I dropped the hammer. When kindness hides selfishness, when intelligence scripts deceit, and when integrity bows to nostalgia, love dissolves. I listed the timestamps of messages, the nickname he gave Lydia, the line about wild what-ifs, and the seat he reserved beside his parents. I finished with, "Turn to your guests and tell them exactly why I am not there. The microphone is already on." Satisfied, I printed 2 copies. One went into the envelope with screenshots, the other into my personal files. Maya folded the envelope with the finesse of a surgical nurse and sealed it with a wax stamp bearing my initials. Closure never looked so literal. Morning arrived. I did not wake to bridal excitement, but to calm, the kind that follows a storm already unleashed. Harper texted that Ethan was on schedule, worried only about whether the string quartet would remember the tempo of our processional. She had slipped the envelope into the garment bag with his tux under pretense of needing to steam it. I dressed in jeans and a white tee because symbolism matters. We drove to a cafe 2 towns over that served cinnamon buns the size of saucers. Maya played a live stream of the ceremony on her phone, courtesy of the videographer's public link. We watched guests file under the glass roof, sunlight refracting off hanging ferns. Lydia glided to her seat in a pale rose gown that shimmered too much for a mere reading. The camera caught her adjusting a delicate necklace, glancing at Ethan like a secret handshake. The coordinator approached Ethan, whispered, and handed him my envelope. The string quartet began their soft prelude. Ethan opened the envelope, expecting vows full of devotion. Instead, color drained from his face. He read faster, his eyes flicking to Lydia, then to the empty aisle. He shuffled the screenshots as though they might reorder themselves into innocence. Lydia leaned toward him, mouth forming a question. He stepped back. Murmurs rose among guests. Pastor Graham asked if everything was all right. Ethan tried to speak, but words slid away. Harper walked to the front, took the microphone, and addressed the assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice steady, "the bride discovered this morning that she was not the only woman given a sacred role in Ethan's heart. She has chosen not to proceed." Gasps echoed off glass. Lydia bolted upright, protesting that I must have misunderstood. Harper held up the printouts. "These are his own words," she said. "Feel free to read along." Pastor Graham, looking stricken, motioned for the videographer to stop recording, but the live stream was already public. Within an hour, the live stream ended. The hours after the ceremony felt surreal, like time had agreed to stretch simply to accommodate new consequences. While the greenhouse emptied, Harper called to report that Ethan's uncle, the family lawyer, was frantically whispering about breach of contract clauses. Apparently, Lydia's inclusion without my consent violated the venue's stipulation that all ceremony participants be declared 30 days prior for insurance purposes. The coordinator, now furious that she might have to redo compliance forms, spoke about additional fees for unregistered speakers. At the same time, the hotel's event manager walked Ethan through the itemized bill. Because the wedding didn't technically occur, the late cancellation fee triggered 20% of total cost due immediately. Harper said watching Ethan's expression cycle through shock, anger, and resignation was like flipping through a mood catalog. He tried to argue that the situation was force majeure, but the manager pointed to the contract line specifying willful misconduct nullified that clause. Lydia attempted to interject, only to be reminded she was technically an uninvited guest. Meanwhile, guests migrated to the courtyard bar, vouchers in hand. Some toasted to my great escape. Others dissected red flags they had noticed in Ethan's behavior during our engagement. How he sometimes spoke over me during group dinners. How he told stories that conveniently cast him as the wounded romantic. Hearing this secondhand hurt in an oddly healing way, realizing I had not imagined the subtle dismissals validated instincts I'd muted to keep peace. Back at the cafe, I scrolled through the joint social account Ethan and I had created for wedding updates. Comments exploded with speculation. I typed a final post. "The wedding is canceled. I discovered private communications that made proceeding impossible. Please respect both families as we navigate next steps." I disabled replies, capturing a screenshot for records so Ethan couldn't claim I defamed him. The account went offline 5 minutes later, likely Ethan changing the password. I shrugged. Let him manage narrative now. By late afternoon, my parents arrived at my apartment, worried I would crumble. Instead, they found me labeling boxes of candle favors we had crafted during a DIY weekend months earlier. My father watched quietly, then began taping cartons. My mother asked if I wanted to donate the candles to the same shelter receiving our would-have-been centerpieces. I nodded. She kissed my forehead, murmuring something about steel in my spine. For once, parental cliches felt earned rather than patronizing. Night fell, and with it came the flood of personal messages that no public post could dam. Old friends expressed outrage. Ethan's college roommate half apologized for not saying anything sooner, confessing he had long suspected Ethan still romanticized Lydia. I skimmed the apology, uninterested in retroactive courage. My detachment surprised me. When you watch a building collapse, you do not ask why the architects skimped on bolts. You move clear of the rubble. 2 days of silence passed before Lydia herself reached out. Her number appeared on the screen while I was waiting in line at a pharmacy. I declined the call. She followed with a text beginning, "For what it's worth." I archived the message unread. There was no version of closure she could offer that would not serve her own absolution. Maya later admitted Lydia had posted a cryptic story about choosing peace, paired with a photo of a flight cocktail. The internet peeled her caption apart within hours, and she deleted the post by morning. Ethan, I learned through mutual acquaintances, took indefinite leave from the family business. A PR consultant advised him to lay low until another story displaced his. The consultant was optimistic. The news cycle spins fast. But reputations spoiled at weddings have a peculiar linger, a metallic aftertaste that companies fear will cling to their label. A canceled ceremony is messy. A canceled ceremony because the groom elevated his ex to guest of honor is theater. People remember theater. In moments, I wondered whether Ethan finally understood the reckless cruelty of his choices. I doubted it. People drawn to nostalgic theatrics often confuse spotlight for clarity. If he ever achieves self-awareness, it will likely arrive years later, turbulent and lonely, in a room where nobody is listening. By then, my name will not be part of his reckoning. It will be an echo he can trace only by admitting how eagerly he traded the real for the remembered. That, I decided, is a richer revenge than any public humiliation I orchestrated that day in front of everyone. I paid the cafe owner double for privacy after a couple patrons recognized me from social media posts and tried to eavesdrop. Maya drove us to my apartment. On the ride, I watched notifications explode. Friends texted, "Are you okay?" Relatives sent heart emojis, confused but supportive. Ethan called twice. I declined. He left a voicemail begging for a chance to explain. I forwarded the message to Harper and blocked his number. The next phase unfolded online. A guest posted a short clip of Harper's announcement on a private family group, but someone mirrored it onto a popular wedding fails subreddit. By evening, thousands of strangers dissected the debacle, praising the bride's grace and the sisters' solidarity. I created an anonymous account and scrolled, amused by speculative embellishments. One user insisted Lydia confessed they had slept together the week before. Another claimed Ethan fainted. Neither was true, but I let the internet enjoy its theater. Legally disentangling myself was simpler than expected. We were not yet married, the venue contract was in Ethan's name, and the honeymoon booking used his credit card points. The only shared asset was the apartment lease due to renew next month. I informed the landlord I would not sign again. Ethan would need a co-signer if he wished to stay. While practical matters simmered, Ethan attempted damage control. He emailed a lengthy apology, insisting Lydia's role was meant as a symbol of closure, not rekindled romance. He admitted withholding information, but denied emotional infidelity. "You misinterpreted nostalgia," he wrote. "I wanted to honor where I came from so I could commit fully to you." The excuse was almost artistic in its arrogance. I forwarded the letter to Harper, and then to my attorney friend, who confirmed I owed him no response. 2 days later, Lydia uploaded an Instagram story of her boarding a flight home, captioned, "Dodged a bullet." Comments were disabled. Word began circulating that Ethan's parents were furious, not at me, but at him for embarrassing the family business. A boutique wine label relying on pristine public image. A canceled high-profile wedding, complete with leaked texts, stained that image. Distributors questioned future joint events. I heard all of this through Harper, who suggested we meet for coffee. She arrived with a grin and a gift, a monogrammed journal stamped New Beginnings. I returned my engagement ring via courier with a sticky note. "Pawn it for tuition for your next life lesson." He sent no reply. Weeks passed. Interest in the scandal faded from mainstream gossip feeds, but remained a cautionary tale in niche communities. Someone added the phrase, "ceremony storyteller," to Urban Dictionary, meaning an ex who crashes a major life event. I laughed until my ribs hurt. Maya printed the entry and framed it for my living room. Moving forward required detox from distrust. Therapy helped. My counselor observed that vengeance had provided control in the short term, but healing would require letting go of analysis loops. She was right. Still, there was satisfaction in knowing I had not simply fled. I had confronted deception publicly and decisively. 4 months after the non-wedding, I attended Harper's birthday gathering. It was small, just close friends on a rooftop with fairy lights. Harper hugged me hard and whispered, "Best decision you ever made." Later, she revealed that Ethan was dating a graphic designer who knew nothing of the fiasco. He had begged Harper not to mention it. She told me she stayed deliberately vague but would not lie if asked. I was indifferent. The story belonged to the internet now. Hiding it was like sweeping glitter. I thought my part in the saga was complete until a courier delivered a padded envelope addressed in Ethan's handwriting. Inside was a receipt showing he had donated a significant sum to a women's shelter, accompanied by a note, trying to do better. No apology, no request for reconciliation, just that token. I folded the receipt and slid it into my desk drawer. Actions mattered, and this one, though late, perhaps helped someone. But redemption is not a boomerang. It does not return the past to your hand once you throw it. Months rolled into a year. I accepted a promotion that required relocation across the state. I packed the framed Urban Dictionary print, the wax seal stamp, and a single screenshot of Ethan telling Lydia she would always be his wild what-if. Souvenirs of a life interrupted. Friends joked that my apartment warming party was the anti-wedding reception. We toasted to autonomy with the vintage wine Ethan's father once promised for our cellar. Harper had delivered 2 cases with a sticky note. He doesn't deserve the good stuff. Some nights I revisit the cafe livestream, stored on a cloud drive. The quality is grainy, the audio uneven. Yet one moment shines, Harper's voice cutting through collective breath, announcing my absence with unapologetic solidarity. I watch Ethan's shoulders slump, Lydia's face blanch, and the guests rise in confused waves. I watch until I remember how still my own body felt in that cafe, how my heart did not race but settled into calm conviction. Then I close the file and sleep. Regret never visits my threshold. Betrayal is a riddle with an obvious answer. If someone shows you who they are, lock the door. They cannot help but walk through again. People sometimes ask if I worry revenge made me bitter. I respond that bitterness is swallowing poison. I served the poison back to its brewer and walked away. I share this now because someone else is likely scrolling through threads, feeling their stomach drop at a betrayal revealed by the glow of a screen. If that is you, understand that silence serves the betrayer. Precision, evidence, and decisive exit serve you. You needn't script theatrical vengeance, but you deserve the dignity of truth told loudly enough to silence lies. Gather allies, document everything, and let the deceiver bear the weight of their own stage. I never imagined my wedding playlist would be replaced by the quiet hum of a cafe. I never imagined the most significant walk I'd take in white would be from a hotel suite to a hatchback filled with crumpled silk. Yet here I am, happier than any aisle could have promised. Revenge, when warranted, is not the opposite of forgiveness. It is the confirmation of self-respect. I left him with a note he will never forget because he tried to write our story in disappearing ink. I simply handed him a mirror and pressed record. My life since is not defined by that day, but it remains the sharp, bright border between naivety and autonomy. I am grateful for it. I hope Ethan is grateful too, in the quiet moments when truth echoes. Maybe he recites Lydia's poem alone. Maybe he stores the ring in a drawer. Maybe he swears never to let nostalgia blind him again. That is his journey, and I do not need a seat in the audience. As for me, I still keep the wax seal stamp on my desk. It reminds me that promises are only as strong as the integrity that seals them. Every time I make a commitment to a friend, a project, a dream, I press that stamp into melted wax on a scrap of paper, a tiny ritual of accountability. The circle imprint reads my initials, not ours, and the edges are imperfect, but the seal holds. So that is my story. The day my almost husband tried to honor his past by dishonoring his present, and the day I chose to become my own future. I walked away before the music started, leaving him under a canopy of glass and ferns, holding a letter shaped like consequences. The poem was never read, the vows were never spoken, and the silence that followed was the most honest declaration any of us could have made.